Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Gator Truth Florida Football Podcast. I'm Daniel, and today we're going to take a look at the final 6 games of the 2022 University of Florida Gators football schedule. In case you missed it, we did start off the podcast with the first 2 episodes looking at the position groups for the offense, for the defense, and which ones I believe to be better or worse in 2022 than they were in 2021. To catch you up if this is your first time listening, we did say on offense the quarterback position, the running back position, the offensive line position would be better in 2022 than in 2021. And for the defense, we believe that the jack/buck position would be better, that the linebacker group would be better, the nickelback position would be better, and that the safety position would be better. We did this so we could build a foundation for what this team will look like, because how can we accurately judge how Florida will be in 2022 without first knowing, will there be things better or worse or mixture than they were in 2021, so we can judge how we'll be going forward against other teams. For the first 6 games of the season, I do believe that Florida should be 4-2 at the worst. The 2 games I think we have the best shot at losing, and I'm not saying we're going to lose. In fact, I feel quite good about these games, is the opener against Utah and the away game at Tennessee. If you'd like to hear why, download episode 3, give it a listen on YouTube, and hear all my details for why that is. I apologize if I sound a little bit different today. I am overcoming a sickness, but I did want to make sure that I got this episode out to you guys, the listeners, and thank you for everyone who has listened to our first 3 episodes or who's listened to any of our episodes, whether on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, on our Buzzsprout site. However you've listened, thank you for listening so far. All right, let's get into it. The 7th game of the season and the first game of the final 6 is a home game against LSU. We do have a current 3-game losing streak against LSU. Arguably, we should have beaten them at least 2 of the last 3 years. However, I'd say maybe even 3 out of the last 3 years. I know many will say, well, that 2019 LSU game was special. We also led in the second half and decided to take out our starting quarterback for a drive while having the leader being tied, just to go 3 and out and give Joe Burrow the ball back. And it was all downhill from there. But I digress. LSU last year, they were 90th in total offense and 65th in total defense. They had the 45th ranked passing attack and the 114th ranked rushing attack. Yes, LSU was 114th in rushing, and that's with their record-setting performance against Todd Grantham's defense. Now, their defense was 80th against the pass and 46th against the run. I know I hinted at it a little bit, but let's look at last season's game. A game where we lost 49-42 in Baton Rouge. I was there, lower bowl. It was kind of a rough game. We had 4 turnovers, and LSU needed a school record in rushing from their running back for them to overcome us. Anthony Richardson led us on 4 straight touchdown drives. He did throw a pick to end that game. However, if you score 42 points, you really shouldn't lose. And here we were scoring 42 points and giving up 49 on the road. With that context in mind, let's take a look at the LSU game and team in 2022. LSU will be coming to Florida after the previous 2 weeks being at Auburn and a home date against Tennessee. Florida is the 3rd game in what looks to be a tough stretch. We can talk about how Auburn may finish last in the SEC West. They finished pretty down there last year. However, they gave Bama a tough game and gave plenty of other teams a tough game. They also have a Tennessee team coming into Death Valley that many are picking to win quite a few games. Even if they're not quite as good, that is still a tough game for this LSU team before coming into the swamp. LSU will be replacing their quarterback. Now, a new quarterback may not be as big of a deal because it's also a new offense. The new quarterback will either be Garrett Nussmeier, or Jaden Daniels, a transfer from Arizona State. There was a third man in that race, and that was sixth-year senior Miles Brennan. However, recent reports have him walking away from the sport. On offense, LSU is also replacing 4 linemen from an offensive line that really wasn't that great last year, although 3 of them ended up being drafted. They do have some starting experience. They have gotten some transfers in, but the big question around LSU is how good will that line be? Even now, if you look at LSU writers, they're not really sure if the line will be SEC worthy. LSU is replacing their top 2 running backs and don't have a player that rushed for more than 107 yards for them last season. They do have some good receivers returning, like Kayshon Boutte, who is one of the best receivers in the SEC when he's healthy. The problem is he's never been fully healthy for an entire season. So a big question for him is, will his health hold up, and will he make it to the Florida game? Switching over to the defense was talented, but not super productive in 2021. They did lose about as much as they returned, and a lot of people will tell you about how LSU did such a great job in the transfer portal, and that is correct. However, what the transfer portal giveth, the transfer portal also taketh away, and I feel they pretty much ended up even. They also are going to be replacing Damon Clark, their top tackler. They do return Ojulari, who was their top sack guy last year, who had 7 sacks. The big question for LSU is how much can they jump in 2022? They've lost a few members of their secondary. They've lost their top tackler, but they do return plenty of guys on that line and also have transfers like Mekhi Wingo from Mizzou, which I know I said the transfer portal giveth and the transfer portal taketh away. This was definitely a transfer portal giveth on LSU's part. Now to look at some of the intangibles for this game. One intangible is, can Brian Kelly do it in the SEC? Every time he's faced an SEC team or even a good team in the college football playoffs, he's been waxed. This is his first year at LSU. He's got a talented team. This is a team that could surprise some people. However, this is also a team that has done pretty terrible the last 2 years. Again, we've lost to those terrible teams, but what will be the difference between the two of us this year? I believe it will come down to a few things. One is we will have the better offensive line. I believe we'll have the better quarterback in Anthony Richardson. And this being a home game, and this also being the 4th or more LSU game for the seniors, who a guy like Ventrell Miller, 6-year senior, he's 1-4 against LSU. You think that's not an extra chip on these guys' shoulder? And this is going to be at home in front of a full crowd for the first time since 2018. I do think this is going to be a big game. I do think this could, in part, be a statement game for Billy Napier at home. You've got to win this one. I do think LSU is going to be pretty good this year, but this is a game we definitely can win. Moving on to the big game, the one that everyone is circling on the schedule, and that would be the world's largest outdoor cocktail party in Jacksonville. Georgia, before they play us, they have Vandy and then a bye. Meanwhile, we have LSU and a bye. Kind of edge to Georgia there. Whereas against LSU, and I don't think I mentioned it, we have Eastern Washington and Mizzou. So we kind of have a schedule advantage on our side in that game. But anyways, going back to Jacksonville, last season, outside the final 2.5 minutes of the first half, you have pretty much went toe-to-toe with the eventual national champions at Georgia. In fact, and I know I mentioned this a few episodes ago, we missed some field goals early, and those field goals may have changed the game. One of our missed field goals was on the last play of the first quarter. If we make that, we're up 3-0 at that point. And then, even if everything goes on as it is, Georgia goes down, kicks a field goal, that's fine. But this is where the game kind of changes. On the next drive, We end up going for it on 4th and 11, I believe it was, instead of kicking a field goal within field goal range because of lack of trust in the kickers. So once we do that, once we dedicate ourselves to every down or everywhere is 4 down territory, it really didn't help our team. And then, of course, missing another kick later on, again, did not help the team. Do I think we win the game had we made that first field goal? No, I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that this game was a lot closer, and I rewatched it in the last 2 or 3 weeks. That was painful. But this game was a lot more back and forth and seemed a lot more competitive than many people remember. Again, outside of those 2.5 minutes, which were probably the worst or some of the worst 2.5 minutes in Florida Gators football history, giving up 21 points in that span. That was with Georgia having one of the top defenses in college football history, had 5 players drafted in the first round. There is no way, and we'll get into this, that defense can be just as good this year. But first, let's look at the offense. The offense is replacing their wide receiver coach / passing game coordinator, who is now at LSU, and their offensive line coach, Matt Luke, who was the former head coach of Ole Miss, who retired to spend more time with his family after achieving his goal of coaching for a national championship team. On offense, Georgia is replacing their 2 guards, both of whom were drafted. They're replacing their top 2 running backs and their top receivers. They do return Stetson Bennett at quarterback, who he's limited, but he's not a liability. What he can do within the offense, he can do pretty well. Georgia also has a great pair of tight ends with Brock Bowers and Eric Gilbert. A big question for Georgia's offense would be this year, as the defense inevitably takes a bit of a step back, can it shoulder more of the load? It was easy last year when your defense is getting tons of 3 and outs, tons of stops, to be able to not be productive on some drives. However, if defense isn't quite as good, can you pick up the slack? Now let's get to the defensive side of the ball for Georgia, where they replace 6 of their front 7, and they also replace a safety, they replace a corner, they're replacing their defensive coordinator, Dan Lanning. To be honest, I don't think that's too much because that is Kirby Smart, Will Muschamp's specialty. Dan Lanning, although he was the defensive coordinator name, I don't think it really changes too much him moving on. Just like I don't think it changes too much that their secondary coach moved on to Miami. Needless to say, Georgia's defense has lost a lot. They also lost a backup linebacker who had 5 sacks last year. The question is, how much of a step back will they have, and how much will Nolan Smith and Ringo, how much will those 2 step up as leaders for the Georgia defense? And the question is, how much of a step back will the defense take, and will the secondary be as productive when it has a front 7 in front of it that may not be as dominant as the one last year? Again, this is a front 7 that had 4 players drafted in the first round of the NFL draft, which is not something that is just easily replaced. One intangible question that I have for this is, how motivated will Georgia be this year after winning a national title for the first time in almost 4 decades? Some teams stay motivated, like in Alabama. Other teams do not stay motivated, or they step back until reality hits them and then they'll start back up again. Who Georgia is, we'll have to see this upcoming year. One thing that I've been saying, and I do want to put in front of you, is in 1997, 2007, you have very talented teams coming off of national titles, returning a decent amount of players, but also a decent amount of turnover. Both lost to Georgia teams that are more talented than. So, when I say Florida has a shot at this game, I do think Florida has a shot. Now, does that mean it's 50% chance of greater? I don't think so. But I do think it's better than a lot of people give us credit for. I would also like to point out that they're replacing 6 of their 7 front 7. And we're expected to be more of a running team. And we've got a good offensive line. You start to turn the wheels. You start to see that math. Oh, we might have a chance to move the ball on the ground against them. Maybe not, but just the way it looks on paper. Do not automatically count the Gators out of this game. Moving on to the 9th game of the season, but somehow only our second true road game of the season, we are going to College Station, to the home of the 12th man, playing the Texas A&M Aggies. The two games that the Aggies have before us are an away game at South Carolina and then home against the Ole Miss Rebels. Of course, we're coming off of bye week and a big rivalry game against Georgia. Last year, Texas A&M was 71st in the nation in offense and 14th in defense. To begin the discussion, I want to read a quote from an anonymous SEC head coach. The quote is, "Jimbo Fisher might be a mad genius when it comes to media because they get talked about alongside Georgia and Alabama, and they're every bit an 8-4 program." Even before I saw this quote, this was definitely a point I was going to bring up. Since 2013, A&M has only had one season with less than 4 losses, and that was the 2020 season. Yes, I know last year they had like the best recruiting class of all time, but those guys are true freshmen this year. There might be guys like Evan Stewart who come in, stand out, start, and do well as true freshmen, but usually a lot of these guys do need time to develop. I bring this up because when I've spoken to a lot of Gator fans, they do tend to talk about Texas A&M like it's Georgia, like it's Alabama, and really, they've not been that. The one year that they were 9-1, since 2013, we should have beat them at Kyle Field. We were a 4th down stop and a fumble away from winning that game. This year on offense, Texas A&M is having a new QB. Their starter for most of the season last year, Calzada, has transferred to Auburn. It'll either be Haynes King, who started the year as a starter before getting injured against Colorado, or it'll be former LSU starter Max Johnson. Johnson, of course, has led the Tigers to 2 wins over Florida. Texas A&M is also replacing their running back Spiller. However, Kane, who's going to be replacing him as a primary back, did have 910 rushing yards in 2021, so not much of a drop-off there. They are replacing their top receiver, at least most receiving yards in 2021, and that is their tight end, Weidermeyer. They like to rely on their tight ends. The question is, who's going to step up at tight end for them? They also lost their left guard and left tackle, and from what I hear, it looks like they're going to be relying on a freshman at least one of those positions. I do believe that these quarterbacks may be a step up, and I do believe that guys like Evan Stewart, the big wide receiver recruit, could help this team be better than 88th in passing offense like they were last year. But how much will be seen, and how much does that offensive line step up, especially on that left side? On defense, they are having a new defensive coordinator, which is former Gator defensive coordinator DJ Durkin. They're also replacing their top tackler, who is a linebacker, 29 of their 39 sacks, 3 defensive ends, a defensive tackle, and this is from a 3-4 defense, and one of their safeties. The question for Texas A&M is the same question that we had for Georgia. How does the defense react if the front 7 is not as dominant? Again, you're losing by far a great amount of your sacks, about 75% of your sack production. Doesn't mean you don't have guys that will step up, but can they as a whole be as dominant as that group was? To look at some intangibles, this is UF's second true road game. How much will this impact the team is a great question. A unique fact here is through our 2 true road games, both stadiums hold over 100,000 fans. So, with that said, how much different will Kyle Field be than a Neyland Stadium full of crazy volunteer fans, especially if they're 3-0? It's easy to say, well, Daniel, Neyland's not known for being as loud as A&M or as crazy as A&M, but hear me out. A&M faces 3 of the teams they lost to last year and Bama before they face UF. If they have 3-4 losses and or they lost to Miami somehow or Carolina, either way, if they have multiple losses, what will their mindset be? Especially as they're getting tired of the 8-4 years that have haunted them since 2013. And if Florida's 5-3 or better at this point, how much motivation do they have? Yes, they want to beat the Gators, but sometimes if you've taken a few losses, it's easy for the crowd to just be like, oh crap, here comes a team we're going to lose to. It'll be interesting to see how the season plays out, both for the Aggies and for UF. And like I noted against Georgia, they're missing a lot of production from their front seven. We've got an improved offensive line. We do have a chance, depending on how these replacements come in, to run the ball against this team. And if we can run, we dang sure can pass. And with that, we will be a threat in College Station come November. Moving on to the final home game of the season, we host South Carolina on November 12th. This is an early senior day. Going back to the schedule and some of the context of the schedule, they get us after we face Georgia and A&M, one neutral site, one on the road. Meanwhile, before they face us, they get Mizzou at home, and then they're at Vandy the week before playing us. The schedule seems to have worked out in their favor. Now, last year against South Carolina, we lost pretty big. Really can't say rhyme or reason, except for maybe it's like the 2018 Mizzou game where Dan Mullen basically totally shut off after losing to Georgia. There was no reason to lose that big, especially with a backup quarterback that South Carolina had. Let me rephrase. We shouldn't have lost that game at all. However, without losing that game, we probably still have Dan Mullen, we may still have Todd Grantham, and we may still have John Hevesy. Grantham and Hevesy were let go after this game. Outside of losing Kevin Harris at the running back position, it looks like South Carolina has upgraded pretty much across the board or returned their starters from last year on the offensive side, bringing in Spencer Rattler from Oklahoma, who did have a great game against us in the Cotton Bowl back after the 2020 season. With that said, he was also benched for poor performance at Oklahoma. However, he did also work with Shane Beamer at Oklahoma, so there is familiarity between Beamer and Spencer Rattler. I say that to say I do not believe that South Carolina's 111th ranked offense from last year will be as bad as it was in 2021. They were 95th in pass offense, 93rd in rush offense. I believe those numbers will go up. Their defense was 41st, 7th in pass defense, 94th in rush defense. With that said, the defense has lost a decent amount of guys, including their top tackler and several members of that secondary who made up the 7th ranked pass defense. In many ways, I see this like the Missouri game in that this is a game we should win, that even with the way the schedule works out, we are just more talented than South Carolina. And also, this is a game I could see revenge on our players' mind. Granted, I've said that about LSU. It should be there about Georgia. It might be there for some players for Texas A&M. Almost every player will have it after the beatdown we took last year against Carolina. One interesting note is, in this game, will we see the debut of black jerseys? I know that it was said that it probably will not happen until the 2023 season, but you can never say never. There's always a chance of that surprise, which Billy Napier had said we will do to celebrate Veterans Day, and that the jerseys would be auctioned off to give money to military families in need. Although I am pretty against black jerseys, I can say this is a cause I can get behind. I know some people may be really for them. However, since we have so many rivals who have black alternates, I'd maybe like to try something different. But again, good cause. I can get behind it. So we'll see what happens with that in the 2022 season. I do believe that if there's a game that's really in the should not lose category that we could lose, and I'm not saying we will, it would be this Carolina game simply because of the schedule and how it works out. But again, this is in the we should win this game category. Now moving to our last SEC game of the season, Just like back in the glory days of the 90s, Vandy is our last SEC game before going to FSU. This game being in Nashville really doesn't mean too much, as there's probably going to be a larger contingent of Gator fans traveling than there will be Vanderbilt fans, especially when it comes to the second to last week of the season. Last year, we won 42-0, and in no world should Vandy go from 42-0 loss to beating us, especially with the talent that we have on this team. I know some people say, but Daniel, Kirby Smart lost to Vandy in his first year. Yes, that Vandy team was still much better than this Vandy team. And also, I will take your but they lost to if you give me the year 2. Guarantee me that SEC title and that trip to the national title game, and then I'll accept that. But if that's not what we're talking, don't give me part A without part B. And now we come to Game 12, Florida's first weekday matchup in the regular season since 1992 at Mississippi State. We are playing on Black Friday against the Seminoles at Doak Campbell Stadium. Before playing us, FSU is away at Syracuse and has a home date against the Louisiana Ragin' Cajuns. Of course, we have South Carolina and at Vanderbilt the 2 weeks before we go there. This may be surprising to some or to really think about it, but this is our first trip to Doak Campbell Stadium since 2018, our first trip in 4 years. FSU has not been bowl eligible since that time, and I'm not sure if they'll be bowl eligible this year. Their offensive line has not been good. They do return Jordan Travis, but how much does that really mean if he can't throw the ball because he doesn't have time? We will see how that works out. We will see how their defense works out. At this point, until they show me that they're anything better than a team with a losing record, it's not much going into. We should win this game. We should win it on a weeknight, something we did not do in 1992, and we should go home happy. Last year we beat them at home with no coach, with really a one-legged quarterback in AR due to injury, and no defensive coordinator. It essentially was, what all could we not have and still beat FSU? Well, that was last year. Now we have better coaching and better play from the position groups is expected. I do not think this game should be relatively close. Thank you, everybody, for taking the time to listen and for bearing with me. I know it's probably not been the most dynamic episode. I am sorry. I want to make sure I got this out for you guys. I am recovering from illness, but hopefully there's lots of good information in here for you. I do want to thank everyone who has listened, who has subscribed, and who has shared our podcast. One thing that I found is really cool is when I've Googled the podcast and see there are people in Facebook groups or in other message boards that I'm not a part of that are posting about our podcast. To me, that's really cool. And also to everyone else who is sharing as well. It does mean a lot. Also, if you have not, please check out the Gator Collective. It is Florida's premier name, image, and likeness group for our student athletes. You can subscribe for as little as $10 a month. You can also make annual donations. This money goes to Gator athletes in football and other sports and becomes a way to attract top athletes to UF. The Gator Collective includes exclusive podcasts, exclusive interviews with players, and also different meetups, get-togethers, information through that. So check out the Gator Collective and help NIL be a strength at the University of Florida. Once again, thank you everyone for listening, and as always, go Gators.